Day has finally come for me to learn about football's darkest day, Hillsborough disaster. So the video that we're going to be looking at today is Hillsborough, the story of football's darkest day by Full-Time Football. This is a video posted 3 years ago. Some of you guys told me to look for a video that was a bit more modernized because there have been more details that have been added. I'm going to assume this is probably another documentary that's been uploaded to this channel. Yeah, from what I understand, this is going to be rough. I had to double check to make sure that other people have reacted to this too, because that's how I determine if a video is going to get me copyright striked or just straight up blocked. So here we go.
April 1989. One of the most important games of the English domestic season was set to take place at Hillsborough Stadium in Sheffield. An FA Cup semi-final between last season's beaten finalists Liverpool and Nottingham Forest would determine who would head to Wembley to play Everton in the final. Winning the FA Cup was arguably more important than winning the First Division League title at that time, so the importance of this game to both sets of supporters couldn't be understated. However, no one could have predicted what would have unfolded that day, and the impact those events would have on not just the supporters of Liverpool Football Club, but the footballing community as a whole. 766 people were injured, and ultimately 97 people were killed as a result of a human crush which occurred due to overcrowding, which remains the highest death toll in the history of British sport. In the years since the disaster, the truth about what happened that fateful day has come to light, and those who fell that afternoon can finally rest in peace. This is the story of football's darkest day.
Damn.
This is the story of Hillsborough.
I saw 10 years old in there. Oh my god.
Built in 1899, Hillsborough Stadium, the home ground of Sheffield Wednesday, was selected to host the semi-final between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. At that time in England, the majority of stadiums had high steel fences in place between the fans and the pitch in an attempt to stem the prevalent pitch invasions and hooliganism which was rife in the English game.
You guys told me about the hooligans.
So much so that English teams had received a ban from competing in European competition following the Heysel Stadium disaster in 1985. At approximately 7 PM local time, an hour before kick-off of the 1985 European Cup final between Liverpool and Juventus, the initial disturbance started. The boundary between the two was marked by temporary chain-link fencing and a central thinly policed no man's land. Hooligans began to throw flares, bottles and stones across the divide and picked up rocks from the crumbling terraces beneath them.
Why were they doing
this? As kickoff
this?
approached, the throwing became more intense. Several groups of Liverpool hooligans broke through the boundary, overpowered the police and charged at the Juventus fans. The fans in the neutral section, who were mainly Italian and Belgian families with young children, began to flee towards the perimeter wall. The wall could not withstand the force of the fleeing Juve fans, and a lower portion collapsed. The blame for the incident was laid on the fans of Liverpool. On the 30th of May 1985, official UEFA observer Günther Schneider said, "Only the English fans were responsible. Of that there is no doubt." UEFA, the organiser of the event, the owners of Heysel Stadium and the Belgian police were investigated for culpability. After an 18-month investigation, the dossier of leading Belgian judge Marina Kopieters was finally published. It concluded that blame should rest solely with the Liverpool fans. Jerry Clarkson, Deputy Chief of the London Fire Brigade, was sent by the British government to report on the condition of the stadium.
Whilst I emphatically say now that I do not condone any form of hooliganism whatsoever, the deaths in my view were attributable very, very largely to the appalling state of that stadium.
Clarkson discovered that the crush barriers were unable to contain the weight of the crowd and had the reinforcement in the concrete exposed. The wall's piers had been built the wrong way around, and that there was a small building at the top of the terrace that contained long plastic tubing underneath. His report was never used in any inquiry for the disaster. Incidents such as these painted the English fans and football fans in general in an unfavourable light, thus giving certain areas of the media the ammunition they needed to spin the narrative against them should further incidents ever occur.
Jesus. It's never that serious,
Hillsborough
man.
hosted 5 FA Cup semi-finals in the 1980s, despite occurrences of serious overcrowding taking place throughout those semi-final games. A report by Eastwood and Partners for a safety certificate for the stadium in 1978 concluded that although it failed to meet the recommendations of the Green Guide, a guide to safety at sports grounds, the consequences were minor. It emphasised the general situation at Hillsborough was satisfactory compared with most grounds. In 1981, a crush occurred at the Leppings Lane end in a game between Tottenham Hotspur and Wolverhampton Wanderers, resulting in 38 injuries. Police believed that no one would have been seriously injured and recommended the capacity be reduced going forth. Nonetheless, the incident prompted Sheffield Wednesday to change the layout of the Leppings Lane end, dividing the terrace into 3 separate pens in an effort to reduce sideways movement. Following these changes, the stadium's safety certificate was now invalid. However, it was never renewed and the capacity remained the same. 6 years later, in 1987, serious overcrowding was observed again, with the quarter-final and semi-final games of that season's FA Cup, as well as the following year in 1988.
That's a lot of people,
Police presence
man.
at that 1988 semi-final, coincidentally between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest, had been overseen by Chief Superintendent Brian Mole, who had supervised a number of deployments at stadiums in the past. However, following an incident that occurred in October 1988, Mole was transferred out of the South Yorkshire Division and was replaced by Chief Superintendent David Duckenfield. The first planning meeting for the 1989 FA Cup semi-final was attended by Duckenfield and not Mole, who could still have been assigned to the game despite his transfer. This would not be the case, leaving Duckenfield in charge of planning, despite having never commanded a sellout football match before and had very little, if any, experience or training in how to do so.
There's going to be a lot of people there. Yeah, wow. That's a lot to manage for somebody with no
As is common at
experience.
domestic football matches in England, both sets of fans would be segregated. Nottingham Forest fans were allocated the south and east stands, holding a capacity of 29,800, which could be accessed by roughly 60 turnstiles along 2 sides of the ground. The Liverpool fans, however, were assigned to the north and west stands, the west stand being the Leppings Lane end, holding 24,256 fans, which could be accessed by 23 turnstiles from a narrow concourse. Despite there being a larger number of Liverpool fans, the Forest supporters were given the larger area in an attempt to avoid rival fans crossing paths. As a result, turnstiles that would normally have been used to enter the north stand were now off limits, forcing all Liverpool fans to converge on a single entrance at the Leppings Lane end. Between 2:30 and 2:40 PM, there was a build-up of supporters outside the turnstiles facing the Leppings Lane, eager to enter the stadium before the game began. At 2:46 PM, the BBC's football commentator John Motson had already noticed the uneven distribution of people in the Leppings Lane pens.
Yeah, so it's so overcrowded. Oh my god.
Well, you look at the Liverpool end to the right of the goal. There's hardly anybody on those steps. No, to the right of there. That's it. Look down there. Unless that's
Yeah.
some sort of segregation for what they call neutrals who've got their tickets from Sheffield Wednesday. That could be it, I suppose.
People presenting tickets at the wrong turnstiles and those who had been refused entry could not leave because of the crowd behind them and remained as an obstruction. Fans outside could hear cheering as the teams came out onto the pitch 10 minutes before the match started and as the match kicked off, but could not gain entrance. A police constable radio control requesting that the game be delayed, as it had been 2 years before, to ensure the safe passage of supporters into the ground. The request to delay the start of the match by 20 minutes was declined. With an estimated 5,000 fans trying to enter through the turnstiles and increasing safety concerns, the police, to avoid any fatalities outside of the ground, opened a large exit gate that ordinarily permitted the free flow of supporters departing the stadium. 2 further gates were subsequently opened to relieve the pressure. After an initial rush, thousands of supporters entered the stadium.
Oh my god.
Hundreds of people were pressed against one another and the fencing by the weight of the crowd behind them.
Just too
Fans were
many
still streaming in
people.
from the rear entrance tunnel as the match began. The police at first attempted to stop fans from spilling out of the pens, some believing this to be a pitch invasion. At approximately 3:04 PM, a surge caused one of the metal crush barriers to give way. South Yorkshire Police Superintendent Greenwood realised the situation and ran onto the field to gain referee Ray Lewis's attention. Lewis stopped the match as fans climbed the fence in an effort to escape the crush and went onto the running track surrounding the pitch. By this time, a small gate in the fence had been forced open and some fans escaped via this route, as others continued to climb over the fencing.
I mean, can't you just...
Other fans were pulled to safety by fans in the west stand above the Leppings Lane terrace.
Wait, I mean, isn't there just a way where they could just... Maybe I just don't understand, but like... At some point or another, you just got to cancel this shit or something. I mean, it's insane that this is even allowed to happen. It's insane that this is even allowed to... Wow. I mean, wow, man. Like, you could just see, like, the number of people coming in through the gates. This is just too many people. But, you know, uneven distribution definitely doesn't help, obviously. But overall, it just looked like too many people, regardless of however, like, what side would have been more fitting for X number of people or whatever. It's just too many people, period.
By this time, a small gate in the fence had been forced open, and some fans escaped via this route, as others continued to climb over the fencing. Other fans were pulled to safety by fans in the west stand above the Leppings Lane terrace. The intensity of the crush broke more crush barriers on the terraces. Holes in the perimeter fencing were made by fans desperately attempting to rescue others. The crowd in the Leppings Lane stand spilled onto the pitch, where many injured and traumatised fans who had climbed to safety congregated. Those still trapped in the pens were packed so tightly that many victims died of compressive asphyxia while standing. Meanwhile, on the pitch, police, stewards and members of St John's Ambulance Service were overwhelmed. Many fans assisted the injured, several attempted CPR, and others tore down advertising hoardings to use as stretchers. Chief Superintendent John Nesbitt of South Yorkshire Police later briefed that leaving the rescue to the fans was a deliberate strategy, and is quoted as saying, "We let the fans help so that they would not take out their frustration on the police." As fans who were able to escape the nightmare made their way out of Hillsborough, the death toll inside continued to rise. A total of 42 ambulances arrived at the stadium. Of this number, 2 managed to make their way onto the pitch by their own accord, while a third ambulance made its way onto the pitch at the direction of Officer Douglas Hopkins, who felt its visibility might allay crowd concerns and make them think something was being done. The remaining 39 ambulances were collectively able to transport approximately 149 people to either Northern General Hospital, Royal Hallamshire Hospital, or Barnsley Hospital for treatment.
Well, I think the biggest irony is that the sun is shining now and Hillsborough's quiet, and over there to the left, the green Yorkshire Hills. And who would have known that 74 people would die here in the stadium this afternoon? And 2 other items I just think of, sitting here now in the sunshine. 2 items. One, that still reminds me of Heysel. The gymnasium here at Hillsborough is being used as a mortuary for the dead. And at this moment, stewards, just as they did at the Heysel Stadium, have got cartons and little paper bags, and they're gathering up the personal belongings of the spectators, some of whom died, some of whom are now seriously injured in nearby hospitals. And there are red and white scarves of Liverpool, and red and white bobble hats of Liverpool, and red and white rosettes of Liverpool, and nothing else out there on the enclosure where all the deaths occurred. And the sun shines now.
Jesus, man.
After the disaster, Lord Justice Taylor was appointed to conduct an inquiry into the events. The Taylor inquiry sat for a total of 31 days between the 15th of May and the 29th of June 1989 and published 2 reports. An interim report on the 1st of August 1989, which laid out the events of the day and immediate conclusions, and a final report on the 19th of January 1990, which outlined general recommendations on football ground safety. Taylor concluded that policing on the day broke down, and the main reason for the disaster was the failure of police control. Attention was focused on the decision to open the secondary gates. Moreover, the kick-off should have been delayed, as had been done at other venues and matches. Taylor found there was no provision for controlling the entry of spectators into the turnstile area. He dismissed the claim by senior police that they had no reason to anticipate problems, since congestion had occurred at both the 1987 and 1988 semi-finals.
I mean, that's not an excuse, though. Like, you can watch that happening in real time and see, like, yeah, this is way too many people. This is not going to go well no matter what happened previously in the past. There are way too many people coming through these entrances. There's no structure. There's no form. I mean, you've got people literally spilling out onto the pitch. And if you have to open up a secondary entrance to let the sheer volume of people come in, something needs to be switched. Something needs to be changed, like, in the moment. Delay the game. Tell these people they got to go. Like, well, people who got denied couldn't get back out because of the sheer volume of people in there. But, well, so in a weird way, it was like kind of like a subtle crushing, because honestly, leading up to this, I thought like part of the stadium or something fully collapsed. I didn't realize the crushing was because of other people being so on top of one another that other people just straight up couldn't breathe. That's crazy. And I'm sure like people in the back, they couldn't stop coming in because they're being pushed forward and funneled in. And oh man, that's crazy. Wow.
He said that the operational order and police tactics on the day failed to provide for controlling a concentrated arrival of large numbers should that occur in a short period. That it might so occur was foreseeable. The failure by the police to give the order to direct fans to empty areas of the stadium was described by Taylor as a blunder of the first magnitude. Sheffield Wednesday was also criticised for the inadequate number of turnstiles at the Leppings Lane end and the poor quality of the crush barriers on the terraces. As a result of the Taylor report, Most clubs refurbished or rebuilt stadiums, partly and in some cases completely, while others built new stadiums at different locations. Initial media coverage began to shift the blame onto the behaviour of the Liverpool fans at the stadium, making it a public order issue.
And I'm saying to you that if police officers had been in there, when this mob surged through, the police officers would have been trampled to death underneath it. You just can't handle them. And the vast majority of that lot had been drinking, the ones that were arriving late, and they will not be told where to go. They won't do anything you try to do. And what can you do?
So are you saying the fans are to blame then?
The police certainly aren't to blame. Because if the fans would do what the police are asking them to do, there wouldn't be any problem, because people would be orderly.
I mean, the entire organization of the whole thing was off from the very beginning. Nothing about this was structured from the very beginning. I mean, that's just plain and obvious. You can't really just pin this all on the fans. I mean, on one hand, I mean, you could hope and pray that people are going to be orderly. But at the end of the day, this is their venue they're in charge of. This is a situation where you have to understand, you've got to have a proper grasp on this if you're going to let this sheer number of people inside and it's distributed unevenly. Now, reading this little news article, fans peeing on cops isn't okay. It was just a shitty situation, it looks like, all around, from start to finish. Everything about this was awful.
On the 19th of April, 4 days after the disaster, Kelvin Mackenzie, editor of The Sun, ordered "The Truth" as the front page headline, followed by 3 sub-headlines. Some fans picked pockets of victims, some fans urinated on brave cops, and some fans beat up PC giving kiss of life. The story accompanying The Sun headlines claimed drunken Liverpool fans had viciously attacked rescue workers as they tried to revive victims, and police officers, firemen and ambulance crew were punched, kicked and urinated upon. Widespread boycotts of the newspaper throughout Merseyside followed immediately and continue to this day. Lord Taylor concluded in his report that the behaviour of Liverpool fans, including accusations of drunkenness, were secondary factors, and said that most fans were not drunk, nor even the worse for drink. He concluded that this formed an exacerbating factor, but the police, seeking to rationalise their loss of control, overestimated the element of drunkenness in the crowd. The report dismissed the theory put forward by South Yorkshire Police that fans attempting to gain entry without tickets or with forged tickets were contributing factors.
In 1990, not to bring criminal charges against any individual group or body on the grounds of insufficient evidence. I mean, this is such a hard thing, I think. From what I've seen in this video so far, obviously, I don't know, like, any, like, I guess, like, modern things that have come to light. I don't know if this is, like, one of the most modern things we can have for this, but this is a very hard thing to pin on one individual group. I do think a lot of it's going to fall on the organizers that put all of this together, that tried to manage all of this. It's ultimately going to fall to the police, obviously. I mean, there was just not a lot of good planning put into this whatsoever. Now, if any of this about the fans doing all that other crazy stuff is true, we don't have any evidence of it. Like they said, it's nothing of this was good. That's just what it boils down to. Ultimately, nothing of this is good. There's going to be blame shifted. It's going to be passed back and forth. I mean, wow. Just, there's so many factors that go into something like this, man.
Inquests into the deaths were opened and adjourned immediately after the disaster. Resumed on 19th November 1990, they proved to be controversial. South Yorkshire coroner Dr. Stephen Popper limited the main inquest to events up to 3:15 p.m. on the day of the disaster, 9 minutes after the match was halted and the crowd spilled onto the pitch. Popper said that this was because victims were either dead or brain dead by 3:15 p.m. The decision angered the families, many of whom felt the inquest were unable to consider the response of the police and other emergency services after that time. The inquest returned verdicts of accidental death on 26th of March 1991, much to the dismay of the bereaved families, who had been hoping for a verdict of unlawful killing or an open verdict, and for manslaughter charges to be brought against the officers who had been present for the disaster.
I don't know if you can really
decision
do
regarding
that.
the cut-off time was subsequently endorsed by the Divisional Court, who considered it to have been justified in the light of the medical evidence available to him. Relatives later failed to have the inquest reopened to allow more scrutiny of police actions and closer examination of the circumstances of individual cases.
it makes one wonder whether it's justice that they do want. You see, they've had justice. It's been through the full judicial process. But because it hasn't come out the way they would like, then they don't feel they've had justice. And really, I think most people will take that for what it is.
I mean, this is going to be the last time I pause for a while, sorry. This is such a rough situation. I mean, there's going to be wrongs on so many different things. I think, on one hand, I'm going to assume like the cops probably tried to do all they could with what resources they were given, but either way, like, it still wasn't planned out very well on their end. I don't know if you can really call it, like, can you charge them with manslaughter for this? We're not questioning like whatever decisions were ultimately made. I'm just trying to think, like, is this one of those situations where you can oh my God, this is such a rough thing to, it's just shitty. It's really just shitty. It's an unfortunate situation, not thought out well, that just ended up in a awful outcome. I mean, couldn't imagine being in those stands, dude. Holy shit, man. Wow. I don't know. I don't think there's really a right or a wrong side in any of this. I do think there's a lot of issues with overall how this was organized and put together. But the blame and shifting, like who was in the wrong and who caused what, it's just like, there's so many negative factors that just go into this, man.
In May 1997, when the Labour Party came into office, Home Secretary Jack Straw ordered an investigation. It was performed by Lord Justice Stuart Smith. The terms of reference in his inquiry were limited to, quote, new evidence, that is, evidence which was not available or was not presented to the previous inquiries, courts or authorities. Therefore, evidence such as witness statements which had been altered were classed as inadmissible. When he presented his report in February 1998, he concluded that there was insufficient evidence for a new inquiry into the disaster. Announcing the report to the House of Commons, Home Secretary Jack Straw backed Stuart Smith's findings and said that, "I do not believe that a further inquiry could or would uncover significant new evidence or provide any relief for the distress of those who have been bereaved." However, the determination by Stuart Smith was heavily criticised by the Justice Minister Lord Falconer, who stated, "I am absolutely sure that Sir Murray Stuart Smith came to the completely wrong conclusion. It made the families in the Hillsborough disaster feel after one establishment cover-up, here was another."
Because to them, it's probably just going to come off as like they're not trying.
A private prosecution was brought against Chief Superintendent David Duckenfield and another officer, Bernard Murray. The prosecution argued that the crush was foreseeable, hence the defendants were grossly negligent. Prosecutor Alan Jones told the court that Duckenfield gave the order to open the gates so that hundreds of fans could be herded onto the already crowded terraces at the stadium. Jones stated that minutes after the disaster, Duckenfield deceitfully and dishonestly told senior FA officials that supporters had forced the gate open. Duckenfield admitted that he had lied in certain statements regarding the causes of the disaster. The prosecution ended on the 24th of July 2000, when Murray was acquitted and the jury was unable to reach a verdict in the case of Duckenfield. In the years after the disaster, the Hillsborough Family Support Group had campaigned for the release of all relevant documents into the public domain. After the disaster's 20th anniversary in April 2009, supported by the Culture Secretary Andy Burnham and Minister of State for Justice Maria Eagle, the government asked the Home Office and Department of Culture, Media and Sport to investigate the best way for this information to be made public. On the 12th of September 2012, the Hillsborough Independent Panel concluded that no Liverpool fans were responsible in any way for the disaster and that its main cause was a lack of police control.
The 395-page report delivered 153 key findings. The disclosed documents show that multiple factors were responsible for the deaths of 96 victims of the Hillsborough tragedy and that the fans were not the cause of the disaster. I don't think they were either, honestly. This was just a very poorly controlled situation. I don't think it's their fault. We've got one guy pushing you. We've all been in these kind of situations before. You've got one guy pushing you from behind, trying to move you forward. You've got another guy in front of you. You're trying to push to move forward. At that point or another, you have to remember, these are just regular like folks on a Saturday coming to watch a game. They're not trying to be this coordinated mass of folks. I mean, that's up to the organizers, that's up to the police, that all falls in their hands ultimately. You can't just shift blame like that. I mean, I don't know. Man, wow, I don't know, man. That's terrible. That's awful. That's really awful. It's terrible, man. Wow.
The findings concluded that 164 witness statements had been altered. Of those statements, 116 were amended to remove or change negative comments about South Yorkshire Police.
What?
South Yorkshire Police had themselves performed blood alcohol tests on the victims, some of them children, and ran computer checks on the National Police database in an attempt to impugn their reputation, despite the idea that alcohol being a major contributing factor had been dismissed by the Taylor report.
As part of the report, the Hillsborough Independent Panel released more than 335,000 pages of evidence online, including the altered police statement.
After publication, the Hillsborough Family Support Group called for new inquests for the victims. They also called for the prosecutions of unlawful killing, corporate manslaughter, and provision of the course of justice in respect of the actions of police both in causing the disaster and covering up their actions. Following an application on the 19th of December 2012 by the Attorney General Dominic Grieve, the High Court quashed the verdicts in the original inquests and ordered fresh inquests to be held. The inquest hearing started on Monday, the 31st of March 2014. On the 6th of April 2016, the 9 jurors were sent out to consider their verdicts, over 2 years after the hearings had begun. These were formally given to the inquest at 11 o'clock on the 26th of April 2016. The jury returned a verdict of unlawful killing in respect of all 96 victims by majority verdict of 7-2. The families of those who had been killed that day could finally rest easy, safe in the knowledge that they had won in their fight for justice, and the truth about what happened that day in 1989 had now come to light. The fact that having the fans who were in attendance that day exonerated from any and all blame in the cause of the disaster was what truly mattered to those who had campaigned tirelessly for the truth after 27 long years. Never again would the survivors of Hillsborough have to defend themselves against the narrative that they were the ones that caused the disaster that day. Never again would the names of the 97 people who died have the word accidental associated with their memory. Never again could those responsible hide from the reality of what they had done. It may have taken nearly 3 decades for the truth to come out, but through sheer persistence, determination, and love for their fallen friends and relatives, the 97 could now rest, knowing that in the last 27 years, not once had they ever walked alone.
So is that why that particular song is so important now? Holy smokes, man. Oh man. That's wow. That's insane, dude. I mean, wow. Yeah, looking back on some of my previous comments, ultimately, like I said, you know, I said it was an overall really terrible situation, like no matter, like, I guess, like what side you pick, but ultimately, this falls down to the way it was organized, the way the police handled everything. Like, I do think that they probably panicked and thought this would be the better decision, but ultimately, when you make those decisions, that's why you gotta be careful what kind of decisions you make if you're in the role of leadership or something, you know, because it can lead to stuff like this. I don't think the intention was to have 96 people die that day, but decisions, man, you gotta make careful decisions when you're in a position like this. That whole situation should have been called off. Whole game should have been postponed, even if it had to have been, you know, so you could separate the fans properly, organize things a little bit better, something, because that was just a shit show. It was awful. It was terrible. Poorly put together. Poorly put together. It just looked like no thought was actually put into the structure of all of that. That's awful, man. I'm very happy that all of the victims ultimately got the justice that they deserved, even if it's just for the sake of just saying that it wasn't their fault, like the commentator said right here. I mean, that's more important than anything. And nobody wants to constantly have their family members blamed, their friends blamed for a situation that they didn't have any proper control over. Whole thing was just poorly put together from start to finish, man. So happy to know that they got their justice and people could finally 3 decades later rest easy on that, man. That's I do want to look at a video kind of talking about like what changes were made to stadiums after this particular disaster. I know that a lot of stadiums were switched from standing to like majority seating, and now you have like your proper like supporter sections and stuff. At least over here, I guess in the US, we have dedicated sections for fans and supporters. But 99% of the stadiums are, you know, our football stadiums or soccer stadiums. All of them have primarily just seating. You know, it's all seating, with a small percentage of it being for standing for these kind of particular situations. So insane, dark, and just awful story overall. I mean, that's, nobody really wins in that situation aside from the families of the victims that got their justice. You know, that's just really, really terrible. But I am happy that there was something kind of done to finally put it to rest. So thanks for watching this reaction. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. Leave a like on this video, and hey man, this is me, your boy Jay, with another reaction, and I hope to catch you in the next one. I hope you have a great day. Peace.